Too many vegans have this mindset where the game that we're playing is to go through life minimizing the amount of harm that we Alright, we're live. Well, first thing I'm doing this evening is talking to a guy called Samuel Alvarez, who is an animal activist in Latin America. Oh, we got some lagging on the stream already. That's better. I first spoke to this guy 4 years ago. He's a animal activist in Latin America, and he's been coming up with some creative ways to be able to give more to animal charities, even with kind of a limited income himself. And I think since we spoke, actually. Hey Samuel, how are you doing?
Hey Chris, all good, and you?
Good to see you. We're live, by the way, so just so you know.
Cool.
Yeah, nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm all right, yes. I just came back from walking the dogs, so they should be kind of quiet, but you never know with these guys.
Yeah, I hear that. My dog's the same, so he might be kicking off any minute as well. I guess that's life with a dog, hey?
Yeah.
So you've had some exciting news since we last spoke, hey?
Yeah, I got accepted in an incubation program here in Latin America for Spanish-speaking people.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited. Hopefully, good things will come out of it.
Yeah, and that's an incubator for animal charities, right? New animal charities. You're setting up a non-profit.
Yeah, you're setting up your own non-profit, but not exclusively about animals. It includes other subjects like global poverty and that kind of stuff. But I think out of the 20 people that are in the program, 5 are going to focus on animals. So yeah, super excited about it.
Awesome. About 20%. That's pretty good then.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty good.
Is that something they've done deliberately? Were they kind of going for that, or they had a particularly high number of good animal applications?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think they might have selected 5 and 5 groups.
Nice. Awesome. Well, congratulations on being one of them. That's really exciting.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I hope this could lead to some good things.
And tell me about the organization that you're founding then.
We're still in the researching phase. We had some ideas, but the whole focus of the program is to first identify the problems. So we're going to spend a couple of months just identifying problems, and then trying to figure out what are the best ways to try to solve them. So I think it's a good approach. So we don't come too set on our ideas and our ways, and rather explore and figure out what might be the most useful use of our time and resources.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
You've been someone who's been thinking about this for a little while already. Hey, we spoke about 4 years ago for the first time.
Yes,
that's gone quite fast, hey? And actually, I originally was interviewing you for a book I was writing at the time. You may have seen that I spoke to another guy that I interviewed for that book, and you said to you both, I don't know if that book's ever happening, but let's talk on YouTube.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if it looks like it's a better opportunity to reach more people. I think it's great that you change gears, so to speak.
I think it might be. I think it's certainly a better engagement to effort ratio. You know what I mean? Like we could have streamed the first conversation that we had 4 years ago, and people would have known 4 years ago what you were up to already. But when you do it for a book, it sits in someone's desk for a long time, and then it sits on someone else's desk for a long time, and sometimes it never comes to see the light of day. But anyway, I'm pleased that we got the opportunity to speak again.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
And at that time, so the nonprofit that you're starting is actually kind of a new venture for you. But when we first spoke a few years ago, the main thing, or how I knew you, I guess, was as somebody very committed to giving a lot of money to animal charities.
Yes, totally. I mean, my plan is to keep doing that, but at the time and for quite a while now, I always felt like I could do more with my time. I have some time to spare, and I guess I always felt a little, I don't know, maybe some imposter syndrome. Feeling like I didn't have the credentials or the education to do something directly to help animals, because I'm a musician by trade, and that's not something that's very useful, I guess, to help other animals. So yeah, for a while I felt like I didn't have anything to offer, I guess, which I suppose it was not completely true. I have been I've been involved in this movement for quite a while, almost 20 years, and I've been reading and thinking and getting to know people. So obviously I have gotten some knowledge and some skills that can be helpful. So yeah, it's been awesome in that sense, that I can do more than just what I sometimes feel like it's my limits, I guess. So I'm always trying to do more to help other animals. I would say that's the thing that motivates me in life. And for a while, I was feeling a bit guilty about not using my time better, I guess. But yeah, donations are still a big part of what I do, and yeah, we could talk a little more about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so interesting. There's a few things that I want to zoom in on. First, I think it's quite inspiring for other people to hear stories of people who say, well, I didn't used to think that I would be able to do something on this level, and I gave it a go, and I was, able to achieve more than I thought. And I think that seems to be like a pretty common experience for animal advocates. It's like surprising how much you can get done when you show a sustained interest in doing stuff and try to, put yourself out there and contact organizations and everything else like that. Because you've always been very active. Hey, we spoke about your organizing friends to do fundraisers and all this kind of stuff for years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I began doing activism, like vegan activism, when I basically from the get-go. As soon as I became vegan, I wanted to do something, and I found a group here who was doing like screenings of documentaries and movies and that kind of stuff. And so I began doing that and giving talks and talking to people on the streets. And I did that for, I would say, at least 8 years. And then, some things happened. The groups dissolved, and I found myself kind of by myself in regards to activism. I was doing a lot of online activism. And I guess it was around 2015 that I began donating for the first time. At first, it wasn't a lot of money. I just donated to a great sanctuary that we have here, which is called Santuario Igualdad. And Did I? Are we frozen?
Yeah, the video has frozen. I was wondering if that was just
Okay.
on my end. I can still hear you though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was just I don't know, maybe $10 a month or something like that to support this sanctuary, which is run by a couple of friends. And I guess there were many things that led me to think more about donating more money. On the one side was the fact that I wasn't doing much like direct activism, so I felt like at least I could do something with my financial resources. And yeah, I remember when with my girlfriend at the time, we decided to do some stuff together. Like instead of giving ourselves presents for Christmas, we decided to donate that money to particular campaigns or charities. And yeah, I think that was in 2017. So we kind of got inspired by that and began to do it also for Valentine's Day and for Christmas, but mainly for our birthdays. So it became kind of something that we did instead of giving ourselves presents. It was for me, it was like a beautiful thing to celebrate our relationship and our love by showing a love to other beings who needed it most. So that's how it started. And I would say around 2019, well, we broke up in 2018, but we were still friends. And I decided to do this by inviting other people. Like I think the first thing we did was a Christmas campaign, and I invited some people to just join, and mostly how do you say this? Well, people I met doing vegan activism, and so we were all very very much connected to the cause. So it wasn't that hard to do that. And yeah, it was a success. The first time it was a success, and then we tried to do it like twice a year, and we invited more people, and eventually we began doing it like quarterly. Every 3 months we do it. We choose a couple of organizations that we love and donate to them whatever we get from this kind of group donations, this giving circle. So yeah, it's been quite exciting. It has had its ups and downs. I think our best year was 2022 when we donated around $2,000.
Nice.
I mean, $10,000.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and after that, it's been between 4,000 and 5,000, and it's been quite amazing to me because most of us are not really high income earners. Well, I'm from Chile. I'm a musician. I make the best months I do, I don't know, 1,200 a month, I would say, which is not much, especially by first world standards. But despite that, we've been able to donate, more than I could have by myself, that's for sure. But beyond that, we've been able to build this kind of community of people who do this as a part of their lives. You know, it's not just a one-off thing. We really consider that this is important, and I guess we're creating some kind of cultural costume, I guess. to have this as a part of our lives. And what's maybe even more interesting is that some of the guys who participate in this, they also do their stuff on their own. So when they have their birthdays, they ask their friends to donate instead of giving them presents, for example.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, I mean,
that's so
I
cool.
pledged. Yeah, I pledged to donate at least 10% of my income. I think in 2019 also. I've been aiming at 20%. But yeah, I don't make much money, so it isn't that much. But through this giving circle, it has paid off. It's been multiplied by at least 2, sometimes by 4 or 5, and I think that's a super good way to multiply our impact and hopefully inspire and motivate more people.
That's awesome. There's so much in there that I love. There's the donation gifts thing is such a great idea, because gift giving, I always feel I am about to spend like a decent chunk of money on something that maybe the person will like. It's a bit, do you know what I mean? Like they might.
Yeah.
I find when people give me gifts, as often as not, you're like, well, this is kind of, I wouldn't have bought this for myself. Right? And equally for other people, when you're giving gifts, you are in the mode of generosity and sort of spending more money on something than you would. I buy nicer gifts than I would buy things for myself, for example. I think a lot of people are probably the same, right? So it's the perfect context for saying, why don't we, instead of buying things that we don't really need and may or may not appreciate, give to an effective animal organization, and we both definitely will appreciate. It's so cool that like you did it with your friends, and then your friends sort of asked their other friends and family to do donations as their gifts as well. I love that.
Yeah, that's been great. Another thing we've done is like for Christmas, when I don't know if this is a thing where you live, but here we usually do this Secret Santa thing for Christmas. And I've also done this, like whoever gets me as their Secret Santa, please donate to this specific organization.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, I remember one year when a friend was like very excited for having done that and receiving emails, and he was like super stoked about having helped the animals, which obviously wouldn't have been as heartwarming for him if he just gave me something that he thought I would like or appreciate, So yeah, there are many creative ways to make this more of a social norm and help animals in the way, which is the most important thing.
That's so cool. Do you have a name for your donation gifting system?
Actually, no. Come to think of it,
we should coin a term. Maybe someone will come up with one. There's got to be some sort of clever name about charitable donations as gifts.
Yeah, one of us has been pestering us about doing this more more formal, like giving it a structure, maybe setting up a website and to help inspire other people. And for the longest time, we thought like, who are we to do this? Like, who would want to read what we do? Who would trust our judgment? And and I think, we were wrong. I think this friend of ours was right, and we should totally try to publicize it, and hopefully other people can replicate it.
You could have maybe like a page and a QR code where you can give to people and they can go and. Actually, this could be a good thing for. I spoke to Farm Kind. Have you heard of that organization?
Yes, totally.
They describe themselves as a re-granting org, I guess. They say that people give through Farm Kind to, the charities that they pass on the funds to. That could definitely be a sort of campaign format for them to do, right? Gifts. As they have quite a controversial one, which is a guilt-free pass where you've given enough money that you're offsetting the equivalent of one person eating meat, and the idea is that you might buy this for your stubborn dad or someone who doesn't, someone in your life who's not going to give up meat. Which, I'm sure some people have views about, should you be doing that kind of moral licensing and stuff like that, but it's certainly an interesting, creative way to, raise funds for these animal organizations. And it's so important for people to understand that they rely entirely on donations, and if people are not putting their hand in their pocket and giving, a decent chunk of money to animal charities, they don't exist, right? They don't have funding.
Yeah, I think that was something that was really important for me to make this commitment when I first started. Like, one of the things I thought was like there's people willing to work for animals, but they have to do it as a volunteer basis because there's no money. And I saw how many of the organizations in which I worked when I started kind of went down because of that. I mean, it wasn't the only reason, but it was a reason. So I could see how this was a real issue, and so I asked myself, do I want to see more people like working professionally on this? Do I want more people to dedicate their whole professional life to this? And obviously the answer was yes. I mean, I didn't feel like I was the guy, but if I could do something so other people could do it, I felt like, sure, I should do this. And that was one of the reasons why I felt like donating was so important. It wasn't, obviously the main goal, the ultimate goal is to help animals, but there are all these considerations of how we are going to get there. That was really important to me. So I remember thinking, okay, I have $20 here. What do I want this to like prop up? Like what do I want
in the world, right?
Yeah. So I want more people to, I don't know, be musicians or I don't know, football players, or do I want more people to be animal activists? For me, the answer was clear. So I was like, okay, I need to focus more on this. I need to spend more money on the things that I think are necessary to have in this world. So that was important.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's put so well. Pay for what you want to see more of in the world. That's how it works, right? If lots of people pay for factory farming, we're going to have more factory farming, and if lots of people pay for animal activism, we're going to have more animal activism, right?
I think that's something that we usually don't think about it in those terms, but when you do, it's like, okay, maybe I should do some things differently here. And I also remember thinking about well, how important is this for me, like really, and what would that imply? Okay, so I think this problem is very important. How many hours a week should I ideally invest in this? Like, would it be 1 hour? It doesn't sound like much. Right. Maybe I should be doing 2, 5, 10. Okay, and how many hours do I actually spend on this? And I realized, okay, not that many. And afterwards, I was like, okay, how much money do I make an hour? How could I translate this into helping animals? So maybe just 2 of the hours I work for money in the week, I could give it for effective animal charities. And when you look at it from that perspective, donating $40-$80 a month doesn't actually look like much. It does look like it's like the minimum we should be doing. And that was something that also fueled that motivation for me. Like, okay, I need to do more. Obviously, if you don't have the money, there's no way to do this. But if you do, and if you do the calculations and you realize, okay, I actually need this amount to survive, and I'm using all of this to just give myself some extra pleasures or fun, whatever, maybe I should be spending some of that to help others. And yeah, I think that thinking in those terms made it more intuitive, I guess, more obvious. Sometimes, I guess, even when you get statistics like, okay, for $1 donated, you can help one hen in a factory farm. That still can feel kind of I don't know, distant, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, for many people, it doesn't really kick you in the chest, so to speak. So yeah, I try to think in new ways to feel like really that this was an important thing for me to do. And I hope other people can also see what resonates and realize that this is actually very important and potentially very impactful also.
That's such a great way of thinking about it. You were reflecting on how much time you would spend and then translated that in. And if you're giving 10% of your income, say, that's like working half of half of one of your 5 working days you're working for animals, right? That's that's pretty cool thought, isn't it? Tuesday afternoons I'm working for animals. That's
yeah.
That's cool. And you said you're trying to give 20%. That's impressive,
yes.
dude.
Yeah, whenever I get more money than I usually earn, I give it away. I mean, I don't even have any doubt about it. I mean, I already have some savings that could help me live a year or a year and a half if I don't get any more income for that time, and I think that's enough. So I stopped saving a couple of years ago and decided to, whatever I get, it goes to the animals.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some personality traits that I've always had. I don't think I've ever been very interested in accumulating things, in buying stuff, or traveling. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky enough to travel working as a musician, so I guess that covers that.
Nice.
Even if I wanted to, but other than that, I'm happy. Yes, just being here, reading stuff, walking the dogs, doing some sports, and that's it. I don't need much. So yeah, and I think in 2022, which was our best year with this Giving Circle, I was getting a lot of good paying gigs. So that's why in part, it was why we donated much more than we usually do. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like a set amount of money I want to donate every year or set percentage of my income. I just donate everything I can.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, dude. And you make me want to give more because here I am in the UK. I'm only giving 10%, dude. You're making me look bad.
Well, I think I mean, if it's useful, I think it's good. But I try not to get so stuck in numbers. I feel like we should always try to do more and help more and not comparing ourselves to others, but to ourselves, like to our previous selves, and try to be a better version of ourselves and have a better impact also. Yeah, if it was for offsetting, I feel like I still have a lot of offsetting to do for my younger self. So yeah, that fuels me also.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you get there pretty quickly if you're doing effective donations. I did some somewhat back of the envelope sums in terms of doing what I call vegan 2.0, right? The idea of trying to prevent animal abuse beyond just excluding it. And donations being one of the most effective ways that you can do that. by my reckoning, doing like a modest amount of that, you can have, I think it was about 54 times. Sort of, if you do that for a year, you'll affect 54 times more animals than if you were just vegan. So you can get there pretty quickly with reasonably modest donations and stuff like that. But that's really inspiring, dude. I'm gonna have to honestly. I'm still saving as well. What a loser! I'm putting money in a savings. Why would I do that? You're right. I don't. What am I saving for?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I would think like, what if I died tomorrow? I mean, right. What the hell? What is this? What about all these savings? Where are they going to go? And do I really want this to happen, or do I want to live like, okay, if I die tomorrow, I'm okay with what I did with my money and my resources and all of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I won't die tomorrow or now.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. But who knows? So yeah.
That's awesome. And it's cool that you are now, having donated and been involved in all sorts of animal activism for so many years, you've got into this incubator, you're going to be starting your own organization. And I totally, well, yeah, I imagine that doing what is referred to in effective altruism as earning to give, right? A lot of people go and work in a bank or something, go and be a lawyer, or you know, at any level, basically, like give your main contribution being giving as much as you can of your earnings to animal organizations. And although on paper that is going to, or I shouldn't say on paper, in reality, that is going to affect more animals and help more animals in many cases, it is not necessarily the most fulfilling interaction with the mission if you are kind of, all of your time is spent thinking about something unrelated, and then you just have a direct debit set up to a charity or whatever, even though that's impactful. So it's cool that you're getting the opportunity to spend your time thinking about this stuff more so, and in a professional capacity.
Yeah, I think it could also help me even with my donations. I mean, it gives me, just as you said, like, I'll be thinking more about this in my day-to-day life, professionally, even if this works. And I think it will only add to that, like to my compromise to like to helping animals. Like, not it's not compromise, it's my commitment. Sorry,
right.
My Spanish got in the way. And yeah, I think it's important to think about that, like what fulfills us. For example, like, I'm a total consequentialist, a negative consequentialist. So I try to optimize in that way, but I also don't pass up the opportunity to help animals in need when I find them. So I have 5 rescued dogs. I have 4 birds. Like, I have 3 pigeons and a cockatoo that I found in the street.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I remember at one time thinking, maybe this isn't the most effective use of my time and resources, you know? I think, actually, I also thought about this when I started donating. Like, okay, I'm able to spend, I don't know, $60, $70 a month to feed my dogs. Why wouldn't I be able to do this, to donate to effective animal charities? I mean, if they get sick, I will have the money I will find the way to have the money to take them to the vet. So obviously I can do stuff to donate more. And at one time, yeah, I was like rescuing more dogs because I found them on the streets, and I was like, okay, if I do this, if I adopt this dog, I will make a commitment to at least donate the amount of money I will be spending on their food.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a way I found to kind of balance that, like my consequentialism and the fact that maybe it isn't so against my consequentialism. I think that helping animals in need, it sends an important message. It could be helping to build social norms that along the way could actually have a large impact. I mean, I've been rescuing pigeons. There was like this huge epidemic, I think, here affecting pigeons in Chile. And you will find a lot of pigeons on the streets, like sick, dead, dying. And I mean, for me, it wasn't like an option to just like walk by and don't do anything about it. But some friends, some people I know that I do this, then ask me, they write to me and they say, hey, I found this pigeon, what can I do to help him or help her?
Oh, that's cool.
And asking for advice. And I see how this kind of builds up, I just did this
example for them.
Yeah, totally. So I see how people, at least, I don't know, 10, 20 people now see pigeons as more than just a nuisance,
That's awesome.
And they are willing to spend money and resources. And I think this could be actually very helpful in changing the ways we think about and relate to other animals in general. So awesome. Yeah, I try not to get so fixated in like very easy to calculate numbers and also keep an eye on the things that could be useful on the long term.
Yeah,
which have a lot to do with our ideas about other animals, about wild animals in this case, and our obligations towards them. So yeah, I try to keep that in balance. Not only think about my impact per dollar when I donate, but also what I do with my time and my worries and my care.
Yeah, the part of the social fabric that you make up and the example that you're setting for others and the norms that you're communicating and everything like that is more difficult to measure, but the effects are very diffuse, hopefully, and reach a lot of people, and that's how culture changes and how societies change, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
I like what you said about it's kind of so what you said about when you adopt a dog, you say, okay, I will spend at least as much as I'll spend on the dog's food on giving to effective charities. They're both sort of altruistic things in this case, but it reminded me somewhat of like I can't remember what this is called, but it's something like treat matching, which is a technique that some of these behavioral scientists have encouraged for basically balancing things that you like doing but aren't good for you, or not necessarily aren't good for you, but are, like watching a TV show that you like or something like that. You get to watch one episode every time that you do something that you don't really like doing but know that you should do more of. For example, going to the gym, like that's the example they give. You get, I'm only allowed to watch this TV show while I'm running on the treadmill at the gym, right? And then, you go and do that a lot more. It's funny in your case that both the things where I want to adopt this dog, so I have to spend more. But yeah, there's I'm sure that people could think of other versions of that, almost like a swear jar situation, right? Where each time you say a swear word, you go put $1 in the jar to give to animal charities or something like that.
Yeah. I think it escapes me the word that Brian Tomasic uses for doing stuff that just feels warm and fuzzy, and how you should think about both of those things when thinking about your long-term impact, because obviously I could have not done any of this, and I could have passed on the opportunity to help dogs and birds and focused only on donating every $1, but maybe that would have crushed me, like my heart would not be in a good place, and maybe I don't know, it could have led to me dropping everything and forgetting about it. So I think it's important to think about those aspects as well.
Yeah. No, I think so. And yeah, allow yourself those connections to remember why you're doing it as well. You know, I have a dog. I have a dog as of about 3 years ago now, and he's, you know, I never really was regularly interacting with animals before that, and I was
Mm.
doing vegan activism and everything, and it was quite weird when I got a dog. I was like, oh well, now I'm interacting with an animal. This is what I spend all my time thinking about, and yeah, I'd never, you know, I'm looking in his eyes, and there's a little guy in
Mm.
there, and he looks at me, and he's sometimes scared, and he's sometimes happy, and stuff. You know, it
Yeah,
really makes you think. It breaks your heart when you think about all the pigs and farrowing crates and everything else right there. Every
yeah.
bit as expressive and emotive. But yeah, I mean, it really renewed my sense. You know, it needed renewing that we're doing the right thing and we're on the right side of history, and you know, pushing. Frankly, I think that you are like at the forefront of generosity, right? You, as you were saying, you don't earn a lot of money, especially in a global scale, and yet you're trying to give up to 20% of your income, and you're encouraging all your friends and family to do these giving circles and coming up with different creative ways to maximize that. It's so inspiring, dude.
Hmm. Thank you. I think you made me think about like my own history with other animals, and yeah, when I was born, I we were a family of seven. Like I have two older sisters, my parents, and we had our dog Lassie and our cat Kitty. And I guess from the get go, I always realized that there was someone looking back, and I would love snails, and I would love birds and other bugs, but at the same time, I wouldn't say hate it, but I wasn't compassionate towards the animals that my parents taught me were not to be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
So I would join in killing spiders and ants and flies. And looking back, I feel like very bad about it. I guess that fuels me still to this day for having done all those awful things. And yeah, some experiences I had when I was a little boy. I think I was like 7 years old or 8, and my parents bought a house for like for summer vacations. They had like a very good deal to buy a house in a city that was growing, and it was becoming a little more touristic. And this was like the first phase of a housing development in an otherwise agricultural land. So we didn't have many neighbors, but in front of the house, to the left, in diagonal to the left, there was like this empty field. To the diagonal to the right, there was a soccer field, and right in front of our house, there was a slaughterhouse. And this was like working as normal, even though there was this housing coming to this place, you know.
Wow.
So when I was a little kid, we would have these experiences, very conflicting experiences of watching out the window and seeing a beautiful sunset and hearing the screams and cries of animals getting killed right in front of us.
Wow.
It was very, yeah, it was very shocking.
Yeah.
And I remember at one time we were like playing soccer in this dusty soccer field, and there were holes in the wall that separated this place to the slaughterhouse land, and we could see the animals there. And I remember, I don't know if we saw them many times, but one day we decided to go there and see the animals. And I remember there was this herd of donkeys, and so we approached them. We Some of them let us touch them, and we were very happy with my cousins. And there was this pregnant female donkey, and she was super sweet, super cute. and we would go. I think we went at least a couple of days to see her. And one of those days, a boy came. He was probably, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old, and he was getting paid to work for the slaughterhouse, to basically to move the animals from one place to the other. So he came. He wanted to lead the donkeys to some other place, and this female, she stayed with us. And obviously this guy got very angry, and he kicked her in the belly, like with all his might. And we were like very shocked. We were like, "Hey man, what are you doing? What do you do this there? She's pregnant." And we were very angry at him. And to this day, I remember what he told us. He said in Spanish, "¿Qué les importa si los van a matar a todos igual?" Which means, what do you even care if they're all getting killed anyway? And yeah, to this day, I remember these words. And I remember coming back the next day, and the donkeys were gone, you know. And at that time, we decided with our cousins to go into the slaughterhouse for the first time. We had always been like outside, and the areas where the animals were being kept. But that day we decided to go in, and yeah, what I saw there stayed with me forever, you know. The first thing we saw, and I kind of checked this with my cousins to see if this was like a real memory of mine or was invented, you know.
Yeah.
The first thing we saw was this huge pile of organs and guts and intestines and all of that. And on the floor there was this uterus with a donkey, baby donkey. So yeah, that was like my first face-to-face encounter with what we do to animals, you know.
Yeah. How old were you?
I think I was 7 years old.
Wow.
7 or 8. And yeah, what I saw next was even more gruesome. We went to see how they killed the pigs. And at the time, sadly, I didn't make the connection with what I would eat later at my house.
Mm-hmm.
But this made it very, very easy for me to change when I finally made the connection. Like, I never thought about, oh, what if we kill animals in a humane way and all of that. That wasn't an option for me. I mean, I had been in a slaughterhouse and I saw what happened there. And yeah, I think that fuels me to this day, you know.
Absolutely. That sounds traumatic, dude, for a 7-year-old. You went into the slaughterhouse, like you were inside the building?
Yes, we got in. And afterwards we went
bunch
to
of kids
like
walking around in there.
Yeah, we went to the killing floor.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was awful. And actually, I think it was so shocking, like traumatizing, that I kind of shut down the emotions at the moment. And I always remembered this, like I had the memories, the images and all of that. But something emotional was like totally blocked. Yeah. And I think that came out like, I don't know, 3 years ago when I was going through some therapy. And yeah, it was like the traumatic event of my childhood. It was when it came out, it was like very, very emotionally draining and awful. And I realized how much that kind of cemented some ideas I had about myself. Like, for example, feeling like powerless. I also felt like I was an accomplice, I guess. Like to this, for not saying anything. I didn't scream. I didn't ask them to stop. I didn't do anything. So for the longest time, I felt like I was a part of this. You know, I was guilty of this. What happened to this piece, to this female donkey, and all of that. And yeah, on the one side, it came with its negative effects. like towards the way I see myself, I guess. But it also fueled my activism and how committed I was to this cause to this day. I mean, I remember these things. I don't think I had talked about this in public ever
Yeah, thank
before.
you for sharing that, dude. That's really something.
Yeah, I mean, I had to kind of control the emotions that
Yeah,
come up
man,
and
that's
remember.
yeah. I feel like I'm tearing up listening to that. That's such a wild experience for
Yeah,
such a young kid to have, and then you have the memories, but you weren't really kind of processing the emotions until years later, I guess. That must have
yeah,
been quite something.
yeah, totally. I mean, I felt worthless in a way, and I think that I kept repeating these ideas to myself until I was, I don't know, 30 something. There was a part of me that kind of hated myself, and I think it was all linked to that, like
Mm,
to feeling guilty about what I saw and what I didn't do. And obviously, when I think back, I couldn't have done anything. I mean,
of
there was
course. What's
there
if a
were
7-year-old starts shouting stuff? I mean, they'll probably just kick you out, right? I mean, as soon as they notice you're there. But
yeah,
you couldn't have done anything. Of course, you couldn't have
yeah,
done anything. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad that you feel that you've processed that and how reflect on it with clear eyes. And it's wild that you were growing up across the road from this place and you were playing football
yeah,
next door.
yeah, yeah. It was crazy. I mean,
I wonder how many kids in that neighborhood would be vegetarians if you polled them today.
yeah,
I wonder, right? Because you're right there. You could look through the fence and see the animals. I feel like that's
yeah.
pretty rare to be in such close proximity and such like to actually be able to see it, get in the building. I feel
Yeah, I mean, the screamings were like impossible to not hear. You know,
right.
whatever you were, and this was like, yeah. If you had even if you had all the windows closed and the TV on, you would still hear the screaming.
God, that's horrid.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I remember my parents trying to not think about it, to make us not think about it. Obviously, when they told them that when we told them that we got into the slaughterhouse, they just reprimanded us and told us to never go in again.
Mm.
So that, in a way, that also didn't help in me processing
Yeah, because you felt you
what
had
I
done
felt.
something bad by going in there. Then
Yeah, that I couldn't tell to anyone. You know, if I
right.
told to my parents, they would not ask how I felt or anything, but just
Yeah, you
get
went
mad.
to report this to your parents, and
Yeah,
they said you shouldn't have been there. That's not
yeah,
that's not the response you were looking for. Hey,
yeah,
as a
totally.
kid, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Dude, thank you so
and
much for sharing that. That's such a um. I had no idea about that backstory that you grew up across the road from this place and went in there as a kid. That's yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really heavy.
yeah, it's super heavy, and I wonder how many other people who are involved in this movement have some stories like that, and they don't get to share them, and I think that can become like a very heavy backpack, you know,
Yeah.
a very heavy weight on your shoulders, and I hope more people will get to share them, to share those stories, because it makes them more real, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see people thinking about, oh yes, it's not good to make animals suffer and whatever, and it's so good that you do this, but when you're not confronted with the reality of it, it kind of feels like, yeah, it's just ideas, you know. And to me, it was never just an idea. It was something very, very real, very, very traumatic. And yeah, I think that it's important. I mean, I don't think everyone should go to these places to feel what it is like, or to see and hear what it is like. But I think it's important to share these stories. I think they can be even more touching and inspiring than arguments, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that'll stay with me, that story. That's yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, needless to say, I hope you seem to have a clear-eyed view of all of that now, and you know that you that wasn't your fault what was happening, and you know that you weren't doing something wrong by being there. And also, I hope that you know that everything that you've done in your animal activism has been, you've helped, although you never will get to see them, you've helped so many times more animals than you saw on those days, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I don't want to pass up the opportunity to help animals when I see them on the streets, because I don't want to feel like that again. Yeah.
No, that's really something. One thing that we had an hour in, and we're 5 minutes to the hour, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I had a couple of things to ask to round off. First, for one thing, I asked you when we spoke years ago, and I asked to Felix as well when I spoke to him recently. What would you do if you had back all of the money that you've given to animal charities over the years? If you had it back in your bank account tomorrow?
Yeah, I would just give it away.
Yeah, I thought that you might say that.
I would just, hope that the fees aren't that high, so I would have to pay that over the, I would give it away. I mean, I don't need more than what I have. I really don't.
Good man. That was an easy answer.
Yeah, totally.
Good man. And if you have, you've spoken a bit about how, you have come up with some creative ways to donate, and you're now, you thought that you wouldn't be able to contribute because your background was as a musician, and now you're founding this non-profit, and that's, inspiring to people as well, I'm sure. Do you have a message that you want to leave people with? It's mainly vegans and animal activist types that are watching, so
I would say first, like, try to always remember why you're doing what you're doing. Do your best to think about how you could do better, even if not more, but better. And don't beat yourself up so much. I think that's something that I should have said to myself for many years. Like, I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't have the best mind or the best brain, but I can do.
You're pretty close, Sam. You're pretty close.
Doesn't feel like it. But yeah, like, treat yourselves with compassion and do the best you can with what you've got. I mean, we didn't choose any of this. We didn't choose to be born. We didn't choose to have the bodies that we have, the minds that we have, the experiences that we had. And just accept that, love ourselves, and do the best we can.
That's an awesome message. Thank you so much, Sam, for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm sure this has been really inspiring to a lot of people. So yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time.
I hope so. And I hope those animals that I saw dying and suffering didn't do so in vain.
That's right. That's right. They inspired everything that you've done for animals since, and I think it's I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to share your story with others and inspire them also. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks a lot.
All right, we'll speak soon, Sam.
Okay, yeah, I'd be super happy to do so.
Awesome. Take care.
You too.
Cheers. Wow, that was quite something. I wasn't ready for that. for that level. Right, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and grab my dog inside. Hey, last time I left an empty chair, my viewership went up. I was a little bit offended by that. When I came back, it went back down again. I've got 5 watching right now. If there's more than 5 when I come back, I'm going to be furious. Very good, only 4. We didn't gain viewership when I left this time, so that's a good sign. Well, that's quite something. I enjoyed that conversation. That was heavier than I expected. Sam shared some really inspiring stuff all around. Experiences from his childhood that planted the seed. That sounds like a really traumatic thing to happen at the age of 7. And the guy's done so much since, raising so much money for animals. What an inspiring guy, honestly. Okay, well, I have a couple of things that we can watch next. We've actually been halfway through to conversations, watching 2 conversations in the last couple of live streams, so I think I'll play the rest of my conversation with Haz, which we started watching. Yeah, here we go.
Thanks for having me on, Haz.
And I'm not sure how far through
give you a seal that you can put on your product that, you know, we approve on a carnivore diet, for example. The nuance or kind of like what the distinguishing.
Well, we'll go from
here. I guess I'm wondering kind of like what would be the requirements for one to pass as vegan 2.0? Like, could they, for example, be someone who's like still eating animals unnecessarily? I guess like, I think you had said that maybe vegan 1.0 is not a prerequisite, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, so the definition that I've put vegan 2.0 is an adapted version of the vegan 1.0 definition, where I've changed excluding, there's 3 parts that I changed, I'm trying to remember them all now. Excluding, as far as practical and possible, becomes preventing as efficiently and effectively as possible. Oh yeah, and then it's all animal suffering to the worst forms, or something like that.
Hello to chat, by the way. I haven't said hello to anyone. I was right into the conversation today. Hey Alicia, hey Andrew, nice to see you. Hey Apwenheimer, I appreciate you being here. I never know how to say your name there.
Which again reflects that it's just a prioritization problem, right? It's like triage. If you're in a medical profession, you have to like choose what's the most important patient that needs fixing. If someone's got a broken back, they're more important than somebody who's got a sprained wrist, right? So that's the kind of concept that I'm getting at there. Now, to the question, would someone need to be vegan 1.0 in order to be vegan 2.0? Technically not. You could do the things that I talk about in vegan 2.0 whilst eating animal products, and you would.
This will be the controversial part of vegan 2.0 for a lot of people. It's true though. I mean, I think it's just a fact that you could do the things that I talk about while still eating meat. I prefer that you didn't do either, or I prefer that you did the things I'm talking about and not eating meat, rather.
Would be, in my estimation, helping more animals than somebody who was following a vegan diet, let's say, but not doing the things that I talk about in vegan 2.0. I do both. I think that most people who are interested in the kind of thing that I talk about would do both. And the reason that I framed it as vegan 2.0 is to reflect that, just because it reflects my assumption that, well, most of the people who are going to be interested in helping animals as effectively as possible probably are going to be vegans. But I know that there's other framings of essentially the same concept, right? So FarmKind, I spoke to the guy from FarmKind on my channel, and that is more appealing with a similar set of prescriptions, basically, to non-vegans, really. And they are essentially saying, like, you know, they even have like a get out of jail guilt-free card that you can purchase, right? And this is, you've given enough money that you've offset the animals that you're going to eat by not being vegan. So that's a little bit spicy and contentious, but if it is,
it's a little bit of sucking air through teeth there.
It's empirically true that doing this set of abstract things, i.e. purchasing meat and animal products, affects X number of animals, and doing that set of abstract things, i.e. donating and doing activism, affects Y number of animals, and this number is bigger than that number. That's how I see it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that seems like kind of a utilitarian calculus where we're completely, I guess, ignoring the, at least as I see it, the definition of veganism as just.
We've got a special guest. This is Pancakes.
Basically being a doctrine that humans ought to live without exploiting other animals, and then it's just basically a normative doctrine, the way that I see it. So, I would kind of maybe try to push the margins of the idea that a person can be, let's say, vegan 2.0 while contributing to the use of animals. Like you said, there would be, I guess, some kind of calculus that would have to be made in terms of like how much exploitation they pay for as long as they donate a certain amount. Like how much exploitation could they be on a carnivore diet, for example, and if they're like, offsetting that with a certain amount of donations to like a welfarist organization. For one, I don't know why they would want to call themselves vegan, but I do see that as an issue. Like if somebody was like, well, I'm helping more animals than you, and they're not doing anything to affect the mindset that other animals are ours to use, to exploit.
Yeah, so for me, the mindset will be an instrumental thing. That the reason why I would care about the mindset is because it is some variable in the equation of how many animals end up getting killed or how much animal suffering there is, right? So I don't think that the mindset in itself is something that is valuable. If there weren't any animals being farmed, I wouldn't care what mindset people had in that respect. I do care about the mindset, but only because it probably affects the animal suffering, which is what I actually care about. So that's what I would say. That's one distinction to make. Another thing is, I want to talk about the welfarism criticism. I think that if we could maybe, sorry to cut you off there, but I think I just want to explore this aspect just a little bit more definitionally, because I think the welfare topic kind of is going to spiral off into a whole thing.
Yeah. So I appreciate your understanding there. So I guess I'm wondering, like, let's say that one day if I really missed the taste of eggs, for example, and I was like, I could make a tofu scramble with black salt, or I could have an avocado with black salt or whatever, but I'm just like, man, I just really miss that farty, eggy flavor of a hen's duration. And I'm like, okay, how can I consume this and still be vegan, still not change my whole social identity or whatever image of myself I've built up in my mind. So I guess like if I donated, like, let's say, I mean, I don't have $100,000 to donate, but let's say I did, and I donated $100,000 to some particular, let's say I determined like what would be the most effective animal charity to donate to, then could I eat that egg and, go to the shopping market, whatever, buy an egg, and still consider myself vegan? I guess would I no longer be vegan 1.0, but I would be 2.0 or something? I guess I'm just trying to understand like the delineation.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, the question in that situation seems to be like, would you not be vegan anymore? Which, I don't know, maybe like it's not that important really. Like if your behavior in the future is going to tend to want to help animals and reduce their suffering and not consume animal products, that's the important thing to me, rather than saying like, well, because you ate eggs on this day, now you're not called a vegan anymore, and how many months have to elapse before we let you back in the club, that sort of thing. Like, again, it's all kind of, these abstracted things are like, what we really care about is the animal suffering or the animal rights violations, right? So whether or not that one person who ate the one egg would still be considered a vegan is like, I don't know, maybe, like, I don't it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Could they be vegan 2.0 if they, but to your point, right, if they gave a ton of money, could they be vegan 2.0? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I guess if I could,
definitely a very consequentialist compared to a lot of vegans. Got into that a little bit with Ask Yourself last night, which was interesting. Talking about, would you rather somebody be a vegan or be a vegan 2.0, right? Give to effective charities and stuff like that. And I said, well, I'd rather they do the set of abstract actions that's going to help more animals. But I can see the argument, Haz is very much focused on the mindset, which again I do think is important in an instrumental sense, because it's going to predict what you do next, basically. And if you have positive or compassionate or mindset that tends towards helping more animals, then the hope is the behavior is going to follow that. I guess that I am saying, if you can cut to the behavior, you do whatever you want with your mindset, basically, right? This is something that comes up in cultivated meat. Some people say, well, it's going to be some sort of problem if we get to cultivated meat and then we've just like invented our way out of the problem and we didn't have to have people contend with the ethics of veganism or whatever. I was thinking the goal is not to have people contend with those ethics. The goal is to have fewer knives in throats. Having people contend with vegan ethics is one way to achieve that, but if you can find other ways to achieve that are way easier than having people contend with vegan ethics, then why not?
So I guess my point was more the distinction between the 1.0 and the 2.0 thing. To me, I guess like my criticism would be that it kind of feels like you're trying to both raise and lower the bar simultaneously. And I don't know what we end up with in that case. I mean, like if the whole world became vegan 2.0, would animal liberation be a reality? To me, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like people would be absolving themselves of some kind of guilt, maybe, while convincing themselves that they were paying for animals to be helped. But it seems like the status quo could still persist and may even be harder to eventually overcome. Like if we think about,
does Plug live under an airport or something? What the hell was that?
How, I guess, it seems like, to kind of touch on the welfareism thing, it seems maybe segueing to that a little bit, like the welfarist organizations, I think, I could see, and I don't know if, they have these conversations, but I could definitely see them having conversations with animal exploiting industries where they try to convince the exploiters to maybe do these things to animals in a so-called more humane or humane appearing way because it'll help them sell more product. I could see them showing data to these companies saying, look, like the humane thing is on the rise, and why don't you switch to this, and then we'll give you a seal that you can put on your product that we approve these methods or something like that. But then animals still aren't liberated, and then we're having to move the goalposts if we continue pushing for vegan 1.0 now, right? Because it's like 2.0 can kind of max out with animals still being commodified.
Yeah, I see the kind of concern that
this is kind of a similar flavor of objection that I saw from Paul Bashir to Tobias Lennart in their debate that David Rams hosted, where basically the vegan activist, and does a lot of on the street activism and stuff like that, so fair play to him, vegan activism, and when that is your day-to-day and you are constantly hearing the excuses and having the arguments and everything else, you are going to be very sensitive to anything that could be a get out of jail free card or a kind of route for people to say to you instead of going vegan, basically, when you're doing your advocacy. So, I appreciate that is the context for a lot of these style of criticisms. And, well, let's see what I say here. I was going to reflect on whether that might be the case. And, if it is the case, does it matter if, in fact, the things that we're saying to do help many times more animals anyway? Let's see what I say.
You're getting at. I think basically you're basically right. It's contingent on other empirical facts. So vegan 2.0 wouldn't work under some conditions. It is the case that there are very effective charities, that there's a decent amount of evidence that they can help. 4 animals to the dollar is about the average of the estimates that I've seen. It is the case that there's a very small number of vegans currently. It is the case that most of us are in a position where we can spare $100 a month, and right, it wouldn't put us on the streets. Those things might not be the case in another world, right? It could be, it turns out all animals charities are actually really, really ineffective, and it takes like $100 an animal to save one. And in that world, well, yeah, we should probably just get people to go vegan instead, right? Now, one of the things that's kind of a contingent empirical fact for the rest of this is that a lot of the interventions that we're paying for and giving money to campaigns and so on, it relies on somebody reducing their consumption.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so if everybody thought, well, I can just pay my, $100 a month or whatever it may be, and I don't have to go vegan, then it wouldn't work, right? Because then the $100, there would be an empirical factor in their change where actually that's not helping that many animals anymore because everyone's now living in this world. Yeah. And so I brought this up to the farm kind guy and said, is there this danger that you get so many people thinking, oh, I don't need to be vegan anymore? And he said, if we get to even 1% of people who are like, I don't need to be vegan because I'm giving my donations, we'll have so much resources that we will have already won. Like it'll be game over before we get to any appreciable scale of people who are genuinely doing the donating and offsetting the thing, because
notwithstanding people who say they're doing it and they're not, which I'm sure there will also be plenty of. Although I will say, it's more easily verifiable whether or not you've been giving to charity than it is whether or not you've been following a strictly vegan diet. You don't really know for anyone, right? We're all sort of trusting each other, but I could show you bank transactions of giving to charity and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's important, but there's something in there.
Yeah, there might be a lot of people who bad faith say, oh, I could just do this donating and it would be helping more
Is there an echo?
Animals, or maybe they'll even lie and say that they are doing it right. But to the extent, so those things are problems clearly, but to the extent that you do have, you know, some budget that the farmed animal movement has, that budget could be 10x before you get to 1% of the population doing the donations. We're going to be, we'll at some point the movement will have so many resources that there will be, you know, Go Vegan ads on every single corner, and every ad on TV will be a Dominion ad and that kind of thing, right?
Like, yeah, I mean, I think that's also kind of the crux of it, right? You know, the whole like personal behavior aspect of it aside, which, you know, I don't want to minimize, but just want to kind of like maybe drag the window to the side and just focus on this other part of the terrain, which is like that the donations aren't just this like nebulous entity, right? Like, you know, who we donate to, I think really matters. For example, if we're donating strictly to like an organization that's just trying to keep companies who have made so-called cage-free promises, you know, to their word, that's one, like for one, it's like a single issue, and it's definitely not achieving animal liberation. And maybe
I am so whilst I do think that these things are going to help the most animals to the dollar, and that's why a lot of the charities that Animal Charity Evaluators recommends do use these welfarist approaches, right? One thing which I think is often missed is that these approaches do reduce the number of animals farmed, just as people going vegan does, right? But it's because they make it more expensive to farm animals, and therefore they raise the price of animal products, and therefore fewer people are going to buy them, and therefore fewer animals are farmed. So that's one thing. That said, I am interested in the idea of, you know, the charities that we talk about in Vegan 2.0. Like I say, they're mostly welfarist things. They're, you know, somebody's done the sums and calculates this the most efficient way to help animals. That said, I am interested in looking at what are the most efficient places to give to if you are interested in creating vegans strictly, right? What's the most impactful vegan advocacy charities? How you create the most vegans to the dollar, as opposed to helping the most animals to the dollar, simply because some people seem to be thinking about it that way and motivated to go about it that way. So I don't think that animal charity evaluators have any estimates for that sort of thing, because they would say, and, you know, I think empirically correctly, well, you know, doing vegan advocacy is just not as effective, you know, animals to the dollar, as doing these other campaigns that we recommend. But clearly both are useful. So I'd be interested in some sort of analysis on the most cost-effective ways of creating vegan strictly, because I think that would be motivating to somebody like Haz, who, you know, gets the concept that charities need money and, right, is motivated to do it, but isn't on board with the kind of welfarist approach. So I think it'd be good to have some strictly vegan charities that are, you know, cost effectiveness ratings for different campaigns and stuff like that. I'm going to chair stream for a minute. Any chair stream fans? Because my dog's barking again. So I'll play this.
Assuaging, you know, the consciences of people who want to still eat eggs and believe that there's now a way to do so without cruelty. But I think that there are also instances of, like you mentioned, you know, the like Go Vegan ads or Watch Dominion type stuff. You know, I think that there needs to be, you know, for people who are donating to different charities and, let's say, pro-animal organizations, there needs to be a very finely made calculation of where their money is best spent, whether is it donating to like Anonymous for the Voiceless, for example, and helping them empower like more groups to run Cubes of Truth? Is it, you know, donating to people's, like, individuals, like Patreon accounts or that kind of thing, you know, and helping helping individual grassroots activists maybe make being an animal rights activist like their full-time job kind of thing. There's also that element of like where the donation meets the pragmatic actual result.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where the effective altruism part of it comes in, and you do need some sort of system of saying like, okay, we accept that we can help more animals by donating money in the right places, and so let's assess what that might be, right? With most things that you might want to purchase, let's say like, when we're giving to an animal charity, we're looking to purchase some alleviation in animal suffering, or purchase some reduction in animal consumption or production, whatever it may be. With most things that you want to purchase, it's kind of obvious or you can observe the quality of it, right? When you buy something off Amazon, well, hopefully before you buy it, right? And you can read reviews and stuff like that, or when it comes, certainly you can observe it and say, okay, this is the thing that I wanted. I judged that it was worth this much money. It's well built, or it's not well built, whatever. You don't really have that when you're giving to charities. You just give the money and you hope that they do something good with it, but you don't get to see that. And from the organization side, if you're a business, if you're selling stuff on Amazon, you better make sure that your stuff's good, because people are going to find out if it's not, and they're going to give you bad reviews, and they're not going to buy from you again, and you're going to go out of business, right? So if you're not doing well the thing that people are giving you money to do, that's going to become obvious very quickly, and you're not going to be doing the thing very well. But that's not the case in charities, right?
Very long, I meant to say that.
It's a unique organization. It's not like a regular business, because the part that generates the money, which, there's salaried people working in charities, there's bills to pay, the charities need to have cash flow. The part that generates the money is completely different from the part that actually does the thing that the organization is meant to be doing. Right? In a business, you're selling your widgets, and if your widgets are good, you make more money, and it has a feedback mechanism built in. But if you're running a charity, you are making, you're getting your money over here in your donations department, whatever, donor relations, right? And then you're doing your campaigns over here, and hopefully that's doing what you want it to be doing. Hopefully it's helping animals. Really, what it can end up being is that you're doing the campaigns that your particular donors like and want to see and want to fund, and they might not know what's effective, right? That's just like asking someone on the street, what do you reckon would be a good thing to put on a vegan poster? Maybe someone really likes cats and now they want to give to the cat charity, right? We need to take this out of the hands of like the ill-informed donor market, right? Where we just kind of look at things and say, maybe that's effective, maybe that's effective. We don't know, do we, right? There's no mechanism for us to verify that. There is, as it turns out, organization that will do it for us, and that has full-time people making all these assessments and going into the details of, like, if I give to someone on Patreon, I have no idea what they're going to do with that money, like how much they needed that money, whether it affects whether they weren't going to be able to do activism if I wasn't giving them that money, right? There's all sorts of things to consider that we just don't have access to that information. But
maybe they'll just buy a new couch or something.
Well, exactly, yeah. And, people need couches, right? And activists need to put food on the table. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that, like, there should be some sort of mechanism for paying activists to live, right? And there is, right? And people get employed as campaigners and stuff like that. But the point is that you want to know that the thing that your money is going to is running a process that is going to use that money well to turn it into, in this case, reduced animal exploitation or reduced animal suffering.
Did you say that there is an organization that kind of looks at?
Yeah. So Animal Charity Evaluators is the one that I refer to, and they do what they say on the tin, right? But they'll do evaluations of which programs are the most effective. That's why you see so much cage-free stuff, because there's been studies that show that's a high number of animals help to the dollar, basically. So you get a lot of charities doing that because there's demand for it in the effective altruism donor space. Which, yeah, you let me know when you want to go on to welfareism. But one point I always like to make on that: the main beneficiaries of welfare policies are not necessarily the animals who now have better conditions than they did before, right? It's about increasing the cost of farming animals so that fewer animals are farmed overall, right? So animals are going to be farmed in as cheap a way as the farmers can get away with. And until there's regulation that will stop that, right, welfare laws, they will do it as cheaply as they can get away with. Now, if you have some law that says you're not allowed to use cages anymore, it's got to be cage free, that's going to make it more expensive, and that's going to mean that fewer animals are farmed, and it's going to make like plant-based alternatives more competitive, right, if the animal products get more expensive. So that is really the main important benefit of welfare policies. It's not about saying like, oh, it's acceptable to farm chickens as long as the cage is big enough. You can take the welfare improvement and then keep pushing for more. It doesn't have to be that's where it stops, but we should push for and take every welfare improvement that we can get, because if we do ever get to a vegan world, it will be because animal farming gradually became less and less feasible, and part of that will be there were too many regulations and people just couldn't afford to do it anymore. If we don't have that, like, we're not going to get there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see where you're kind of making that calculation with, making it more expensive for the producers. I think that, there is something to be said for the fact that people's consciences can be eased, though, if they think that these systems have been sufficiently reformed. Because I think there are, we don't want to underestimate how informed the average consumer is, nor should we bank on people being uninformed or misinformed. Not to say that you are, but I mean, not say that you're implying that, but when, if we think about like a scenario where there's, let's say, like a way found of killing animals painlessly, and they're given the best possible conditions, etc. Like, even though this is kind of a little bit far-fetched because it's not scalable, to imagine this situation where animals are just being treated magnificently. But let's say we get kind of this combination of like maybe the human population growth slowing down a little bit, animal product consumption reducing drastically, but like there still being a pretty strong contingent of the population who's still exploiting animals for food. It would be it would be a higher, like steeper hill to climb, I think, if we had this kind of situation where we were having to argue on the basis of rights. And I don't think that, I do see that there's this kind of schism that my commentary is kind of like jumping over, in that like, it's already the case that animals are being exploited and abused for these products. And I can see, the temptation or seduction of the position, like, well, if it's going to be happening anyway, why don't we just do it in a slightly better way? And it could even be, I could even be accused of almost like instrumentalizing the egregious suffering of animals as the status quo currently stands in order to get people to go vegan, right? But so that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, hey, don't make things better for animals, because if you do, then I'm going to have a harder job getting people to go vegan. It's more that I think we get what we ask for is what I'm saying, or at least we should ask for what we want. I think if we advocate for abolition of the use of animals, we're likely to get welfareism anyway.
There's something to be said for that. There is, like,
I think it's more likely to be the other way around. If we do incremental improvements to welfare, we will eventually get to liberation.
Like, just to point about negotiation, where you put out like a higher offer than you hope to end up with. Certainly, but I think, a key thing that I always struggle with is we don't have the big green button. We don't have the big green make the world go vegan now button. So all we have is incrementalism, right? We don't. We can talk about doing vegan activism, and you could say we can't get everyone to go vegan, so it's pointless. Like, okay, but we can still actually get some people to go vegan, and it's going to be a gradual process, right? It's the same with welfare improvements. It's going to be, we don't have the big green button, the big green abolitionist, let's end it all now. And so our only alternative is to gradually try and push things on the demand side so that people are, fewer people.
I like that big green button idea. I'm going to start saying that more. I don't necessarily know that Haz is doing this here, but sometimes vegans interact with topics like welfareism as if we have the big green button and we're just doing welfareism instead of pressing it. All we have is incrementalism, as I say here. Even if you're doing vegan activism and trying to get people to go vegan, you can't get everyone to go vegan overnight, right? And so it is a gradual process, however we go about this.
People are willing to pay for animal exploitation and also simultaneously push things on the supply side so that there are, I do think that better welfare standards are important, by the way, as well, right? There is the point about we're raising the price of production and therefore we're reducing the number of animals. I think that's the main point that abolitionists would want to see. But I do think it's also important that animals are going to be in better conditions than worse conditions, right?
Yeah. If I could say, from a perspective of someone who does street outreach often and has, probably dozens of conversations per week, I think that, maybe on a good week, but anyway, if somebody does approach the conversation from a perspective of them being like, I try to buy the humanely raised and the cage free, etc., they are a little bit more primed for the message that I'm delivering to them.
That's interesting.
So I do think that it does
That's kind of cool. He's kind of saying the opposite of the concern that I anticipated. That if people think they can get high welfare stuff, then it gives them an excuse to keep going. But he's saying that the people who come out with, trying to get high welfare stuff are actually closer to or more sympathetic to the vegan message. Perhaps that shouldn't be surprising.
Kind of like serve as a little bit of a priming mechanism. If somebody has these kind of like welfare concerns in their mind, for me, that was also something like before I stopped eating animals, I would occasionally be at the store thinking like, I could pay a little bit more for this like cage-free pasture-raised egg versus this like factory farmed one. And I would feel a little bit guiltier. I'd feel a little bit scummier if I bought just like the cheap, 99-cent dozen of eggs instead of the $3.29 one or something like that.
Sure.
But so I do see some value in, I guess, priming the psychology of people to at least consider anything about the victims behind those choices. My kind of position on welfareism, in the past, I've kind of wasted probably too much energy fighting it. And I think right now I'm at a point where I don't see it as a good use of my energy to try to get in the way of people doing pro-welfarist activism, because there are people making all sorts of ridiculous, nonsensical claims and completely disregarding.
I'm really glad you said this. And I think this is an evolution for a lot of vegans when they're coming from the position that, welfareism is unacceptable and it's bad to have the message that it's okay to farm animals as long as the cage is big enough and stuff like that. I do see people say, only anecdotally, right, but like hardcore, pure abolitionism only, and no, anti-welfareism seems to have gone out of fashion, which is a good thing in my mind. It's interesting you said I don't see it as a good use of my energy getting in the way of people doing pro-welfareism activism. I certainly agree with that, because there's going to be people doing anti-welfareism activism, right? That's called the animal lobbies, the livestock lobbies. they are going to be opposed to mandatory higher welfare standards. So yeah, it's good if there are not vegans on the same team as the livestock industry opposed to increasing welfare standards. So I'm glad to hear him say that.
There's people who say that plants feel pain, right? And the entailment of that is that if there's a house burning, they're going to go in and save the petunias maybe instead of Fido or something like that.
Right,
so,
right.
I mean, and there's people who are just like, I just don't care. I want my bacon. But then there's also people everywhere in between. And I'd rather, I'm not saying I want to waste my time getting into rhetorical battles with people who are just not open to change at all. But yeah, I think that, if we just zoom out kind of from a big historical context, if there are some people whose approach may not make the most sense to me pragmatically, as long as I don't think that it's injuring the vegan movement. Heck, I mean, I talked very briefly on Discord once with Gary Francione, who's like kind of the father of the abolitionist approach. And I asked him straight up, I said, like, can somebody consider themselves an abolitionist? Or I think I said a vegan and a welfarist. I think were the two things that I put forward. And he said, yeah. I mean, and this is the guy who, again, is kind of like the prominent abolitionist approach.
Just kind of backing up what you said, right? This is the abolitionist, and yeah, you can be a vegan and a welfarist. Yeah, it's really good to see that there aren't so many vegans actually opposed to welfarism now. That is just such an own goal.
Figure. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily incompatible. And like I said, it's not. I recognize that energy is a finite resource. It's not the best use of my time to try to get in the way of people doing pro welfare stuff. I hope that I'm
the noisiest chair in the world.
Some good comes of it. It's just not where I would put my energy. Like I would never, the social experiments that I run live, I would never be out trying to convince people that if they're buying like caged eggs that they should go cage free. And kind of like, to allude to what you were saying earlier about the donors kind of wanting to follow and see what their money is actually doing. In effect, I think that probably a lot of the organizations who do focus on cage-free type stuff would probably rather be doing other things, but they're kind of almost like politicians in a way where their opinions have been bought basically and preordained.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a bit more of a cynical framing than I thought you were going to end at. But yeah, I mean,
I'm a bit of a cynical guy. What can I say?
Fair enough.
Idealistic, but cynical.
Yeah, listen, I mean, people whose job it is to work in a non-profit and that pays their rent, like, obviously, at the end of the day, you have to do what the funders are going to give you money to do, because otherwise you've got to get another job, right? But I think that there are people. It's not that they've just been bought out by some funders, right? They probably, like you and I, think ideally we wouldn't be farming any animals at all, but they recognize that it's a pragmatic thing to move towards that goal, to do whatever reduction you can. Like, people are really allergic to the word reduction, but reducing includes the amount to zero, right? Getting to zero animals farmed would be a reduction in the number of animals farmed. Well, we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, so I'm actually more of a proponent of reductionism than I am of welfarism, because I think reductionism, at least like from a quantitative perspective, is on the same scale of veganism, or let's say vegan 1.0, where, like I said, with the gas station bathroom example,
I'm glad that's catching
on, kind of thing, if I use that soap, I'm probably taking myself a little above, some higher number, not to say I'm at zero, but, just a greater than the greater than zero number that already exists. So yeah, I think, and to get to the heart of it, if we want to see zero across the board, because I think ultimately the goal of vegan 2.0, as you call it, kind of circles back, I would think, to the goal of vegan 1.0, which is to get zero societally, right?
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, vegan 1.0 talks about a lifestyle that excludes exploitation and suffering I'm reading the implication as like from my life, right? From my lifestyle.
Yeah, not necessarily lifestyle. I guess we could say lifestyle. I don't know if you found this too, but some people I think also use that term to kind of malign veganism and just be like, oh, it's a lifestyle, and it kind of implies
it
like
quite optional. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think just, the doctrine that we ought to live without exploiting other animals, like, just seeing them as individuals, and assigning, I'm not actually a moral realist, so I don't believe in like the objective existence of rights necessarily. I think they are, contrived. But it's kind of my position that I believe that it's a good idea to act as though rights exist, if that makes sense. So it's a little nuanced, but it does bear out in conversation because people will talk about all sorts of things like might makes right and things like that, and kind of talk about whether rights actually even mean anything when the rubber meets the road and the oppressor is exerting power. So I just say, it's a good idea to behave as though rights exist.
Yeah. No, that's a good way of thinking about it. I've thought the same thing about, I guess this is a type of right, but like owning stuff. My friend said to me, when you own a car, there's nothing that changes in the physical universe. Not like there's now some invisible chain between you and the car, right? It's just you transferred some money to someone, there was some paperwork changed. I mean, it will, when it comes down to it, if somebody steals the car, it will be me that the police come and act on behalf of, whatever. But there's, in some sense, nothing has changed. But exactly as you're saying, it benefits us all in society to behave as though something has changed. And if we all agree to behave as though something has changed, then something has in fact changed. Because now is my door that the police are going to come to when the car gets stolen, right? So
yeah,
it's like is it like intersubjective, whereas like it's not quite an objective reality, but it is true with respect to what everyone else thinks is true. Like Christmas is the 25th of December. Like it's only true because everyone else thinks it's true, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, even calendars and clocks and all that stuff, we've
That's a really good example of an intersubjective thing. I'm really pleased to think of that on the fly.
agreed that, heck, I don't know, it's like it's the year 2025, whatever. What does that mean?
Right.
I think something else that I think about, oh man, I lost my train of thought there. We were talking about ownership rights. Totally lost it, man. I just took my B12 too.
One thing I was going to say, there is an empirical point. I appreciate what you said about the people who come up and say, well, I try to get cage-free eggs or whatever, high welfare stuff. You see,
reminds me, I do be supplementing that B12.
them is actually more likely to be amenable to the vegan message. And that's an interesting perspective, because we often worry that those people might be less likely because they think, oh, I'm getting cage free, it doesn't matter, it's fine now. But I see what you're saying, because it's like they've already made a concession that the animal's experience matters to some extent. And actually there's a similar thing in some corporate communications about like cage free, for example. A lot of companies are like quite hesitant to communicate about it, because it's essentially saying like, I've stopped doing that thing that was horrific and I shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
It's like you don't necessarily want to make that big of an announcement, because a lot of consumers don't realize that, like, oh, what? So before this week, all your eggs were coming from cages, were they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like from a PR perspective.
Especially because these things take time to implement. So they're like, by 2027. So people are like, okay, so I have to be, paying.
Good lad, I'm do be supplementing.
For the
right. But the good thing is now it's gotten to the stage with cage free. It's very much like this S-curve adoption, because you'll get a sort of domino effect in the industry where enough others doing it. If you're the CEO of Burger King, you don't want to be the only one not doing cage free, right? If everyone else has done it, now you're going to be behind, and that actually becomes a basis for you to be criticized. And that's a really interesting thing that works with respect to legal changes as well, right? Let's say that there's cages for chickens are legal in the US, right? And now if you get enough, and food companies in general are going to lobby to keep that the case, because they're using cages and it is profitable to do so, right? But if you get enough companies on board with...
What's the issue with the Enervo-sexing thing, AQ?
Voluntary commitments, and now they are going to have their supply chains cage-free or whatever it may be. Their incentives when they go into those lobbying meetings have completely changed, because now they're not saying, well, we use cages, we want to keep cages allowed for that reason. They're saying, we don't use cages, our competitors do use cages, they've got an unfair advantage now, so we actually want the regulation to catch up to where we are and enforce everyone to not use cages, because we're already not doing it. It's not fair if others get to do it, right? So that's kind of the dynamic of how these things change, and how government policy can end up following on from like private certifications and like private policies like that, because it just changes the incentives of the companies when they go into those meetings.
Yeah, once more than 50% of the supermarket market, let's say, has cage-free policies, they're going to lobby to make that the law, because they're going to be enforcing costs on their competitors, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get where you're coming from on that. And I think part of that also factors in this idea of social pressure. Like the cultural mood, I guess, shifts toward more consideration for animals. I think something else that it's important to
Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining. Drop a like if you haven't already. I appreciate you.
Realize is kind of riding along this is this increased sense of hypocrisy on the part of people who, let's say Chick-fil-A or, let's say Chick-fil-A, I don't know if they do a cage-free or not kind of thing with the chickens they sell, but if they do, for example, and somebody goes there and they're eating a chicken who they know was raised not in a cage, the defenses that they may have to continue eating the chicken unnecessarily might be a little bit closer to the surface of conscious awareness, and might bother them a little bit more, might prompt them a little bit more to rehearse or tell themselves the messages that they tell themselves to justify the continued eating of the animal. Does that make sense? Like, something that I always do if somebody says, I've gone to cage free, is I'll ask them like, why, which kind of catches people off guard all the time, because they're like, what do you mean why? Like, you're the vegan guy. What do you mean? And I'm like, no, like, why? Like, because it's just about, exploring that person's, value framework. And
that's really good.
Yeah, I think that dissonance, I think, just becomes a little bit louder. So Chris, I want to...
That's a really cool point you made there. I like the term the dissonance becoming louder as well. That's something that we need to be aiming for. A lot of people have the mistaken idea that you want to avoid giving people cognitive dissonance because they're going to double down on their beliefs or whatever. That can happen sometimes. But in fact, an intolerably high level of cognitive dissonance with respect to animal ethics is the thing that gets people to go vegan. And a lot of vegans today, right, can remember having had a period of before going vegan and being in that cognitive dissonance and having that uncomfortable feeling. And it's up to us as activists to, as Has says, make that dissonance louder until people feel they have to take action.
I want to ask if it's okay with you, if anybody watching maybe has any questions for you while we have you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free to fire them in the chat. And in the meantime, I'll just say, like, I agree with that approach, and that's what I would do for like reducitarians or vegetarians as well. It's like, invite them to reflect on what has caused them to do the stuff that they've done so far, basically. Have them ponder on that and communicate it and so on.
Yeah, I have to say with vegetarians, I've had a little bit more difficulty, because I think there is a little bit of like an identity buy-in with that, where there's a little bit of like this identity of being like a pro-animal person kind of thing. Like, and I know that a lot of people, including myself, as I did, will go vegan after some time of just not eating animal flesh. So I don't know if it's necessarily effective or a good idea to just rag on vegetarians, to
again based. Yeah, I think that's another really good. These are in the category of things that I always think this is. What norms would I want to promote amongst vegans if I was in fact a nefarious double agent for the meat industry? And I think the idea of vegans shitting on vegetarians is certainly one of those ideas, right? From our perspective as vegans, it's not a good idea to be doing that. Even although there are, clearly are some inconsistencies there or whatever, I don't think it's helpful to make it a priority to shit on vegetarians.
Promote veganism. But my approach with vegetarians is a little bit different. Like generally, if somebody says that they're vegetarian, they'll kind of have a little bit of a sense of entitlement or ego or arrogance about it, and already will be a little bit defensive and say, I'm not the target audience. I'm not the person you should be talking to, and that kind of thing. And what I found often makes that defensiveness worse is when vegans then will say like, well, what do you know about the dairy industry? Which I think that's a magnificent question, but I think maybe it's better at that point if somebody says they're vegetarian to ask them how they feel about something like the fur industry. These like slightly lower hanging fruits that they're not like clinging onto necessarily or likely, and then kind of explore their values, because I think a lot of people, when they go vegetarian, they either do it with an ill-informed or not completely informed set of values or set of, I guess, information, or just without having explored their moral values at all. So I think like if
I see AQ. Yeah, that makes sense.
If somebody can get to the point where you get a vegetarian interlocutor to be like, oh, I'm against the fur industry because we don't need to be killing animals for their fur, then I think it's something that can be effective to then circle back to the equally unnecessary dietary consumption.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Getting people to, fur is a great one, because like it's so optional. No one needs to have fur. It's not something that it's not a hill that many people are going to want to die on, right?
Yeah. All right. So let me scroll up and see. I think we might have had some questions. Earlier, Lewis said vegan 2.0 might be a weird one, but I guess that's not exactly a question.
Elwood has cage-free dog eggs.
I don't know. Dog eggs seem like they would be a little bit harder to procure. Daniel Broccoli had said maybe vegan 2.0 is loving your enemies. Interesting.
I'm not allowed. I didn't really understand that, but I just sort of.
Okay, let's see. I think I saw something from Lewis where he said, okay, so under vegan 2.0, if you can get a vegan chair with no more difficulty than a leather chair, but you help two piranhas to be more comfortable, then it's okay to buy the leather chair. Vomit emoji.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I get. I think it's like a trade-off thing, like would it justify kind of thing. I mean, the gist of what you're saying, yeah. I mean, I don't say that buying the leather chair is okay in any case. What I would say is, if you have somebody who can take one set of abstract actions that is going to save X number of animals, or take another set of abstract actions that's going to save Y number of animals, I am just going to say which is bigger, X or Y, and go with that, basically. Right now, there is going to be, as I said, a limit at some point where you can't have everybody thinking that they can just do their donations, and now that they don't need to reduce their consumption anymore.
And you can do X and Y, which is the part that I omitted here.
So it will get to that point, but I think we're a long way from that point. And if the fact is that I can get someone to either do something that's going to save 100 animals a year if they go vegan, and it's much more difficult to get them to do that. Or I can get them to give some amount of animals and save 10,000 animals a year, and that's going to be much easier to get them to do that. Then I'm going to tend to do the one that is going to save more animals and be easier to do. And yeah, that's not to say that you shouldn't be doing both ideally, but ultimately I'm just going to be concerned with the number of animals that are helped or the amount of animal suffering.
Chris, I wanted to ask you something. Maybe in the meantime, if anybody's still thinking of questions to send in. So you mentioned animal suffering, and that's a topic that I think I've been moving away from a little bit as I get clearer on my kind of moral philosophy. Because, for example, I'm a huge proponent of rewilding. I want, if we...
I do like this guy a lot. He's very thoughtful, very reflective. I enjoy this conversation.
Think about, and, obviously you don't need to be informed of these statistics, I'm sure, but like just the sheer amount of farmland, both, for animal farming and for plant farming, that's there for the farming of animals for that system. If we think about all of that land, if we switch to a plant-based food system, we're going to have a lot of land freed up. There's going to be huge swaths of land that we could devote to rewilding, getting forests and things like that back, the lungs of the earth and all this.
Put the link in the chat there in case anyone wants to go and give Haz a sub or a like and so
on. And I think that potentially that could result in more suffering. Now, I'm not sure if there would necessarily, if a forest would be teeming with life more than with sentient life, I should say, more than like a cornfield, for example, that's just dedicated to animal food, feed growing operations. But theoretically, I think it's plausible that it would, if we had like a big forest, I think that more sentient life would eventually kind of like find their way there, emerge there. And these would be animals likely who would be trying to kind of like get like the so-called sovereign animals, the animals who would be kind of like trying to get away from human civilizations more, like not like necessarily animals.
I guess that's the work term for wild animals, which I don't hate.
Who seek out human settlements because they can kind of like benefit from humans like on the margins, but yeah, I guess this kind of brings up the idea of like the suffering of so-called wild animals, which I kind of want nothing to do with, like that whole equation. Because not because I'm a fan of appealing to nature, but because the logical entailments of wanting to intervene in that context are terrifying when you put them in a human context. Like, in other words, like if it's another way to say what I'm saying is,
here I'm thinking, aren't all humans kind of wild animals?
It's like if it's speciesist to say that I would prefer to not protect non-human animals from suffering in the wild, while holding a position that I would protect humans.
Some of them certainly are.
From predation, or I would want to protect humans from predation. I think people who adopt that position but then want to police other species of animals without policing humans like to the same standard are also equally guilty of speciesistic notions. If that makes sense, like, if you hold the position that non-human animal violence is something that we should stop with force, even to the extent of like shooting a lion if they're about to kill and eat a zebra.
The lion question.
It really kind of begs the question about how that person would feel toward non-vegan humans, or maybe more accurately, anti-vegan humans.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say anti-vegan humans who had written in blood that they'll never go vegan, you know, or even if you just pose a hypothetical, like imagine this person's never going to go vegan. They're going to live 40 more years exploiting tons of animals. Like, what do you think should happen to this person? I truly believe that violence begets violence. And if we're intervening in the so-called natural world with violence, I think it's a very, very close, not to make a slippery slope fallacy, but I really just think it's like just very close to a situation where we could have people trying to.
I guess that is what AY was calling last night an informal fallacy, because I feel like a slippery slope argument is not necessarily fallacious. It is, you know, when you see things in the direction of some bad outcome, that can be worrying. Right? It's like, oh, clouds are gathering, that means that it might rain. That's not wrong. That does mean that it might rain. Doesn't mean that it definitely will, but it increases the chances, right?
To justify, like, you know, violence toward anti-vegans, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, first of all, the whole wild animal thing, I do think that it's worth caring about wild animals. And the way that I think about it is I care about humans who are affected by war, like some human-caused thing that other humans could stop doing the war and then they wouldn't be affected by it. But I also care about humans who are affected by, like, earthquakes or tsunamis or whatever, like natural disasters. So that feels like the analogous thing to me. It doesn't have to be some other group of humans who are causing the suffering in order to think that I could do something to alleviate it, right?
I don't think it's analogous, though.
Okay.
Because, I mean, this is kind of like basically trying to defend somebody from some kind of a perpetrator in either example. You know, it's
okay. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Well, so you're making an analogy to, like, could you basically, the uncomfortable question becomes, like, could you use violence towards
Hey, Gary, good to see you.
non-vegan humans on the basis that they're going to hurt animals, right?
I see that as the question that, you know, we ought to ask people who are against predation in the wild, and who are willing to basically intervene using violence, right? Because it's like, because I feel like I feel like if somebody's willing to use violence to prevent violence, then you have to ask them, like, where they draw their line, you know, who is potentially subjectable to that.
Yeah. Well, I would think about it as we essentially already do use violence to prevent violence towards some animals, right? You're not allowed to kill and eat dogs in my country. And if you do that, a man with a gun's going to come around your house and tell you to bloody well stop it, right? We do have laws around treatment of animals that you can be prosecuted for animal cruelty, right? People who work on farms get prosecuted for animal cruelty. This is like state violence, really, right? It is, there's going to be the police force come and sort you out if you do these things that we've agreed you're not allowed to do. And really, by, like, expanding welfare laws, for example, you're kind of just slightly expanding the circumstances in which you're going to say, we do now deem it acceptable, ultimately, to use violence to enforce this certain
that's
rule.
a very interesting perspective.
Yeah, that is like, yeah, anything that is illegal, you're basically saying we're willing to use violence to stop you from doing this. Ultimately, if the rubber meets the road, right, we're going to try and arrest you or fine you or whatever first.
Yeah, or as we say in the US, dollars to donuts.
Right.
I also didn't really get that, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of
Oh, was that when the rubber hits the road is meant to be? I don't know.
Yeah, I think basically such a person could say, well, yes, ideally I would use violence to stop non-vegan humans, but essentially it's not
Hey, Super Jammy. Yeah, I'm Chris Bryant 2.0.
pragmatic to do that, right? It's not if you go out on the street and start slashing up non-vegans, right, you're going to find out why you can't do that pretty quickly. But ultimately, you'd be looking to say, we're going to try and persuade enough people and convince enough people and vote for it, right? Just like we voted that you're not allowed to eat dogs, we're going to eventually, hopefully, vote that you're not allowed to eat pigs.
I wish, Gary. God, I would get so much done. If only there was more of me.
Pigs, and when we do that, it will be essentially inflicting violence on people who break that rule.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, I really try to emphasize the mindset shift. You know, I would hate to have, you know, a situation where the majority of humans kind of like vote in certain types of animal saving measures, even though I guess that's kind of like where we're ultimately going to have to see things go, whether I'm alive to see it or not. You know, it's going to be incremental, but I would really just hope that it would, you know, and this is where me being an idealist comes in, but I would just really hope that eventually people could grow up in a world that conditions them to make excuses to care about others, including others other than human animals, rather than, you know, making excuses to hurt them. I want to check out this question from Jeremy. He says, I tend to think that foundational moral improvement of humans, let me put it on the screen here, and human cultures in the near future is the largest moral priority. Foundational moral improvement. What do you think about the means of making humanity broadly? And yeah, I guess this is really just kind of touching on what I was just saying too.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that's a good approach. It's a very meta approach. This is very like effective altruism.
Go for it. Just trying to preview another video over here, and I think it was too much for it to handle. Kill the marsh. Man, I can't click anything right now.
Thing to talk about. I mean, I sometimes think of it as, I think I said earlier in this conversation, like, what kind of process are you running? Are you running?
Ah, we're back. Good. I don't know if I had to stop for you guys. Did that lag out, or was it just me?
A process that is going to tend to buy more eggs in the future, or are you running a process that is going to not tend to buy more eggs in the future? That's how a lot of things are, really. Like, when you look at effective charities, you're essentially saying, what kind of processes are they running? Are they going to be running a process that tends to produce these results, right? And we've got probably some evidence from data from 1 year when they did this a few years ago, and hopefully we look at other things to say that they're running a similar process now, and so it's probably going to be similarly effective. But to the point about, like, broadly getting more people to think that they ought to care about being moral and doing it effectively, I think that is going to be something like the ultimate variable that is going to predict, you know, the amount of suffering or well-being in the future one day. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what Vegan 2.0 is, trying to persuade people to go more vegan, and yeah, trying to basically grow the movement and yeah, increase, you know, people talk about expanding the moral circle of moral concern, right? So yeah, definitely on board with that.
I think that it's also important when we think about welfareism as a whole and kind of like charities and the pragmatic approaches of the charities to, I mean, investigations are great, but I think we need to kind of like maintain a message. So I think like whether it's welfareism or single issues, it's possible to promote those combinationally or concurrently with a vegan message. And I think like, if these organizations have any leeway whatsoever when it comes to like satisfying donors and having the donors see that their money that they spend is go.
So yeah, definitely on board with that.
I think that it's also important when we think about welfareism as a whole and kind of like charities and the pragmatic approaches of the charities to, I mean, investigations are great, but I think we need to kind of like maintain a message. So I think like whether it's welfareism or single issues, it's possible to promote those combinationally or concurrently with a vegan message. And I think like,
yeah, sorry for the interruptions, guys. I'm going to get a less tragic computer soon, so I'll be able to restream videos in more than 360p and everything.
If these organizations have any leeway whatsoever when it comes to like satisfying donors and having the donors see that their money that they spend is going toward what they wanted it to go toward. I think that these organizations have a responsibility to try to maximize that ceiling, or to try to kind of like get in as much pro-vegan messaging along with whatever welfareism or reducitarianism thing or whatever like individual investigation. Like there was this whole thing with, I think it was called Fair Oaks Farms, like the Fair Life milk people, I think. And they were like, in these videos, these people were like tossing calves around and beating them over the head with jugs and stuff like that. And I still hear about this to this day. And this was years ago when this investigation came out. And, this was like thought to be kind of one of the higher welfare types of dairy operations, if you will. But, it's like what I really kind of find a little bit disillusioning is that non-vegans will gladly boycott like a specific company who an investigation happens to be released on, but fail to see or appreciate the very real possibility that they're paying for even worse treatment of cows, for example.
Yeah. So are you saying something like there's a danger of making it as if this is an isolated incident? Is that the kind of?
Yeah, not only that, but more so I'm kind of trying to highlight the idea that these pro welfare or pro reducitarian types of campaigns, if you will, or even like just single issue campaigns advocating for the boycott of fur, let's say, things like that. I think that, vegans should absolutely kind of like take our liberty to try to inject as much big tent veganism ideas within that, whether or not the individual participants agree necessarily with everything. I think that we shouldn't let the lowest common denominator participant or donor, when I say lowest common denominator, I mean like morally speaking, kind of like control all of the messaging, and I would think that they'd still be happy to come along with the overall campaign, would still be happy to donate. I don't think they would call somebody up and be like, yo, I really love that non-cage egg campaign that you did with the money that I sent you, but could you tone down the vegan messaging? Like, I don't think that would be a possibility. I think that.
Yeah, it depends, right? I mean, so spending money doing vegan messaging will have, save some number of animals per dollar spent. I don't know what that number is. Hopefully you can try and do more effective vegan messaging. It's going to increase that number. You save more animals per dollar spent. But it might still be way less than the animals that you save by spending money on cage-free campaigns. It just might be. You just have like supply and demand curves that meet, and that's how many eggs get made. And if you shift the demand curve, you can reduce the number of eggs getting made by doing that. And if you shift the supply curve, you can reduce the number of eggs getting made by doing that. And it just can be the case that shifting the supply curve reduces the number more than shifting the demand curve.
Yeah, well, feel free to nuke away, Kerry. You've got the spanner.
For me, it's just an empirical question as to which of those is more effective. And it seems like the people who have done the research think that the supply side stuff is saving more animals to the dollar. So
well, the whole supply, I was going to say, sorry, the whole supply side thing is also just very convoluted because of subsidies and bailouts and tax breaks and that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's like that in the UK as well, but in the US, I mean, the price of eggs, let's say, goes up.
No, that's okay, Gary. Yeah, you do it.
And everybody's
you do it.
freaking out. Then the government steps in, tries to get the price down. How do they do that?
Yeah, but they don't have infinite money to do that, right? If the price of eggs is high, then the price of eggs is high, and the government can choose to allocate some of their limited budget towards subsidizing eggs if they want to, but they've got lots of other demands on their limited budget, and they might not necessarily want to raise taxes so the eggs can get cheaper, right? Like there can be subsidies, there can be like other things, but there's a cost to doing that, right? They don't get to do that for free, and they don't get to do it forever.
Can't they just print more money?
Not really. There are consequences of doing that. Governments have limited resources, just as we all do, and they might choose to spend some of that subsidizing the price of eggs, but they might not. There's a lot of other stuff that they need to spend money on. If it was the case that like all of the supply side stuff can just be immediately undone by some subsidies or whatever it might be, to the extent that actually doing the supply side stuff is not impactful at all, I would want to know about that, and I would want to stop advocating for doing any supply side stuff, because I'd say, well, that's a waste of resources that we could be putting towards something more impactful, right? But if I was funding supply side stuff because I've looked at evidence and that says that supply side.
Oh, thanks, Gary. That sounds awesome. You have to link me who this other person is that you're talking about. I don't think I know Axel.
Stuff's the most effective. And then I found out that some of the money I thought I was giving to that was going to demand side stuff just because somebody thought that was cool. Like, I don't know, I'd stop funding that because I'd be like, well, I wanted to go to the more impactful stuff. So I don't think, we can't just appropriate, the funders might have their reasons for funding whatever they want to fund. But if they are wanting to fund cage-free stuff because they feel that that's the most impactful, I don't think we have good reason to think that it would actually be way more impactful if they would fund this other thing. If we did have good reason to think that, we should go to the funders and present the evidence and say, why don't you fund this other thing instead, right? But we can't just be roguely pilfering off the funds.
Yeah. The whole supply side part I've found is kind of a little bit discouraging, I think, to think about, as an activist who focuses most on helping people align, their values with their consumption. I think that, just to think that Congress can pass a bill that just completely wipes out your whole lifetime of effort, I think is really discouraging.
Damn, we've lost it again. We got 10 more minutes of this and it keeps on freezing. I don't know if you guys can still hear me when it does this. Hopefully you can. Seems like it comes back in like a minute. But I have noted that my computer does not appear to be up to doing more than 2 things at once while I'm streaming, which is a great shame. Streaming videos, it seems to struggle. Did okay in the call earlier, although we did have a freeze screen moment. But restreaming when I'm watching a video is it always struggles, which sucks because that's the main thing that I would want to do. I'm doing this through OBS. Maybe I should explore Streamlabs or direct to YouTube or something.
But so I guess I'll tell myself that there are limited resources, I guess, in order to keep myself optimistic. I want to highlight this comment from Jeremy here. It says, if a man says he doesn't harm his kids by beating them, you don't say kids being harmed has nothing to do with the definition of anti-beatingism. You say, yes, you are fucking harming them. I'm not sure I understand. If a man says he doesn't harm his kids by beating them, doesn't harm his kids by beating them, I think he means so the man is beating his kids, but he's saying it's not harming them. You don't say that kids being harmed has nothing to do with.
I think this is when we were talking about. I imagine this is when we were talking earlier about would you still be vegan in some situation? Like, I think I could be wrong. I think the point they're making there is like, the label is not really the important thing. It's the outcome. It's the harm. I see. I might have misunderstood the comment there.
So he has Jeremy has another comment here. Could Chris comment on the impact on sentient experience relative to animal size? Ooh, that's
yeah, this is definitely an effective altruism person. Nice.
And the danger. So Jeremy is, I believe, very consequentialism oriented. I had a really long conversation with Jeremy, actually, like maybe a year or so ago, on my channel. If you ever wish to check it out, he has some pretty insightful takes on things.
Nice.
But the danger of environmental message cause being vastly more chicken torture. Sorry. My brain is starting to slide a little bit here.
That's all right. We've been going a good hour and a half, so fair play. So this is about something called the small body problem. Essentially, one cow can yield about 200 meals worth of meat, but one chicken can yield about 2 meals worth of meat. And so subsequently, in order to get the same number of meals from chickens, you need to kill 100 times as many of them as you would to get the same number of meals from a cow.
But then there's this other aspect here about like the environmental thing, like people switching from cows to chickens, for example, like, oh, we need to prevent the cow burps and farts, that kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. So I think that's where there can be a divergence with the environmentalist. If you were strictly an environmentalist and you were trying to kind of maximize for that, you would prioritize cutting out red meat and actually dairy. And if you were an animal suffering person, or animal welfare person, whatever, you would want to prioritize cutting out chicken and fish and eggs, because small body problem, right? So from small bodied animals, you need more of them for the same amount of food, and also they tend to be treated worse, just because it's, you can't really throw around a cow to the same extent as you can a chicken, right? So yeah, that's definitely a thing to be concerned with, and a point where animal people can diverge from.
Yeah, that's right, Kerry. You should check out Ask Yourself YouTube channel. He's a real smart guy. He's got a lot of great vegan content on there.
Environmentalists, but the ultimate answer for each of them is to be vegan. So
yeah. All right, Chris. Well, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to highlight that. Thank you for joining me here, and thank you to everybody who participated in the chat. I think this was a constructive conversation. Thanks to VPM for connecting us in this manner through SoyFeed. And if you haven't checked out SoyFeed, check out SoyFeed. And I don't know what time it is there, but I think probably like 6:15ish p.m. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Here it's just quarter afternoon, so still got a whole day ahead of me. But hope you have a good evening. Thanks to everybody who joined.
Thanks.
And I think this gave me a little bit to think about, just in terms of like the demand side and the supply side, and kind of thinking about, I guess, how I can kind of like, I hate to use this word, maybe benefit the animals. I was going to say capitalize, but just, benefit the animals kind of in light of the efforts that that welfarism is making, rather than seeing it as necessarily oppositional.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. If we can do a nice, like, if you take anything from this conversation, let it be this, right? There are the two groups who are most opposed to welfare improvements, like welfare laws, let's say, are going to be vegans who don't understand the supply and demand stuff and don't understand that actually reduces the number of animals, and factory farmers. Right, those are going to be the two groups who are most animated in their opposition to welfare laws. And so I think that it's a great trick if the factory farmers can get some percentage of vegans opposed to welfare improvements, because they don't quite understand that it's basically pointing in the same direction as what they're trying to achieve. And again, they've done a great job if they can get vegans fighting with each other and saying you're the welfarists and we're the abolitionists or whatever else, right? The reality is we're getting on the same bus 99% of the way. And in fact, I'm coming 100% of the way, right? But I'm just recognizing that we've got to do the 99% of the way in order to get to the 100% of the way. So, yeah, we ought to be pulling in the same direction. Even abolitionists ought to be in favor of welfare improvements because they reduce the number of animals being farmed. And I think that, fortunately, it seems like largely that whole schism is not really a thing as much as it used to be. That's more like the old animal movement, where there was this big wedge, which again will have been amplified by industry interests. So yeah, I think that welfarists should also be vegans, and I think that vegans should also be welfarists. I think we're pushing in the same direction, and we should understand how that works together. And yeah,
I think also when we do the pro veganism outreach, I think it's important to, if we're getting a lot of agreement from a non-vegan, or if there's a non-vegan who happens to be particularly thoughtful and not just agreeing for the sake of agreeing, but actually thoughtfully thinking, agreeing, I think there's value in asking them how they would respond to different criticisms of like an abolitionist position, and ask them what they would think about just the idea of bigger cages or free range, that kind of thing, just to get people used to opposing those as an end goal, right? So I think there's a way to appreciate the role that they can play as a means to a vegan future without endorsing them.
Interesting, Kerry. I'm sure I know what you mean by that.
Or even while
it's just like it's kind of all on a spectrum, or
stating that these aren't exactly aligned with the definition of non-exploitation.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to say that that's enough, right? It doesn't have to say if we did this it'd be enough.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Chris, for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Go ahead and wrap up the stream here. And thanks again. Thanks again for coming. Thanks again to everybody watching, whether you're watching live or on the replay. And this has been a good conversation. So thank you again.
All right. Take care, dude. Speak soon.
There we go. I enjoyed that conversation a lot. I think Haz is really thoughtful, and I think that he, I watch WWE in my spare time. All right. I think that he had an impressive level of responsiveness to what I was saying. I always say it's very rare for somebody to really change their views in real time. And I think there was a couple of he was obviously more reflective than I in this case, because I had a couple of times looking back where I thought, well, I can see his point more in retrospect than I appreciated at the time, which is always nice when you rewatch a conversation and you go, oh, okay, I didn't get that at the time, but I see what they're saying now. And there was definitely a couple of points also where Haz said, Actually, that's a fair point on some of the welfareism stuff. And I'm pleased to see that there does seem to be a trend of vegans not opposing welfareism. Again, I think if we, as I said in this conversation, right, if we ever do get to a vegan world, it will be at the end of an incremental process where farming got gradually less and less feasible, and part of that is because there was too many regulations and it became too expensive to do. So yeah, I think we're really shooting ourselves in the foot to the extent that we actually go and oppose any welfarist measures. Nice. Okay, Kerry, maybe I'll check that out. Pax Fauna article on welfareism versus abolitionism. Maybe we'll take a look at that on a future stream. As always, I really appreciate you guys sharing stuff in the chat and being part of the stream and everything. One thing that you can do is join the Discord server at dsc.gg/chrisbryantphd, where there's a good little community going now. Put links to that in the chat. So if you haven't already, nice. See you later, Gary. And see you later, everyone, in fact, because I'm going to call it there. I might stream again tomorrow. My wife's away at the moment. That's why I'm live streaming, because I don't have anything to do in the evenings. So I'll probably stream again tomorrow. We might finish watching the Paul Wood conversation. Got some of the way through that last time. I'm also quite keen to watch Ask Yourself's video on Alex O'Connor, because I have it on my radar to do some video about Alex O'Connor and is he vegan 2.0, after he name dropped the Shrimp Welfare Project as a famous now shrimp eater on his recent interview. So we'll see what AY has to say about Alex O'Connor next time, probably tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.